What's up, my good peoples? Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast, where we're talking about ideas that stimulate wholesome thinking into identity, purpose, vision, and action. I am James Anderson, and with me is Carolyn Anderson and Logan Eaton. My good peoples, what's happening?
Hello again. It's been a little bit.
Been a little bit.
Totally. Yeah, excited to get into this one.
Amen.
Excited.
So excited. Yeah. Management. That's the topic today. We've been brewing on this one for a while. And I find this to be a very important topic. Because this is really the gateway to what you want. It's the gateway to promotion. It's the gateway to the next thing. If you overlook this, consider the gate closed. Or if you do manage to hop that gate, I pity the city. All right, that's coming up later. All right, so check this out. Management, right? Management is a big deal. And what do we mean by management? Management, as the BT definition goes, is the effective use of your current resources to create value and produce growth. So management is the effective use of your current resources to create value and produce growth. Management is the key to personal development that qualifies you to add value to the outside world. Management is how you develop your knowledge, your focus, your vision, your planning, your problem solving, learning, right? You're making attempts. You're like, okay, let's just say you have a space in your house or on your property. And you're like, hey, man, that place is a mess, right? It's uncultivated. It's untended. Well, what if we cleaned it up, spruced it up, and did something productive with that space, right? That is a part of vision, right? Where you're looking at a space and thinking, hey, how could I make what it is into something more? And you have to ask yourself the question, well, what would it be? What could I do with it? How could I make it more productive? All those ideas, those questions, as you're trying to answer those, is developing vision, right? You're employing the purpose, or you're employing the principle of vision. And then you're making plans. You're like, okay, well, I can't quite see it, but step one, let me just clean it up, right? Maybe it's just a messy room. Let me clean it up. Let me get out all the junk. Let me take everything out. Let me paint the walls, right? Let's paint the trim. Let's paint the doors. Let's make it look beautiful. And then you have this nice new space. Okay, well, what could I do with it? Well, maybe I could have put a desk here, or I could do this here, or I could whatever. You're employing vision. You're taking something that's uncultivated and then actually cultivating it, imposing some vision on it, making it better. It's this process that is helping you develop in these very practical and very necessary principles. Management, your current resources, is how you begin to live your life. It's a huge part of living on purpose. So management, right, is about discovering what you have and tending and cultivating it. It's never about what you don't have, right? So what are we talking about? We're talking about, sometimes people think, well, right now money comes in and money goes out. I don't really know where it goes, but, it tends to come back, and usually we have enough, but I don't know, right? But if I had more money, I would become a better manager. That's a common thought, is completely inaccurate. More is an amplifier. It's not a transformer, right? So if you currently mismanage money now, having more money will just let you mismanage more. But if you're currently managing what you have, then more would be managed in the same quality that you do it now, right? So if you're able to set aside a certain sum of money for a specific purpose, and then you don't touch it, right? You made a decision and you don't even come back to it. Well, then you'll be able to do the same thing with more, right? Being faithful with little qualifies you to be faithful with more. Overlooking the little means you will overlook the more. If you mismanage the little, you will mismanage the more. And in our journeys over the last couple years and what we're doing right now, I have seen people in positions, in leadership positions, who have organizations, and the question I'm asking myself is, how the heck did this person end up with an organization? How are they leading people when the foundation of their lives is broken? I'm like, how? And you see the deficiency, and then this lack of identity, this lack of self-concept, this lack of character development, this lack of the ability to manage what you currently have has a negative impact on everything they're doing. And it's not to say that then there's not like good things that come out of it. But my question is like, how do people who aren't ready end up too far down the line?
That's the jump the gate you're talking about?
Yes, if you jump the gate. How did these people jump the gate? Because you don't want to jump the gate. I think it's like you get a dream and you get an idea. And it's common for all of us, right? It's like, okay, I want it now. Well, I just had an idea. I'm so excited. That means I could do it now, right? God's just going to provide. It's all just going to work out. Dreams are not necessarily something that's then like realized in an instant. Had the idea, have the result, right? That's not how vision works. Vision is a picture of the future. It's that picture then that allows you to discover the pathway to realizing it. And there is a serious pathway to that. I'm finding that people are having these dreams or having new ideas and they're wanting to get after them now, but they're not considering the reality, right? And so I'm finding that people are not asking themselves this question, but everybody needs to be asking this question. How do I know if I'm ready for the next thing?
Well, it's exciting to think about like what's next. And some of the people that we talk to, it's like they're looking at expanding or building or growing. And those are all great things. But it's just a matter of actually taking the time to plan versus just getting excited about what's next and considering all the thing. You have to stop and count the costs. What will it actually take to do that? And then not that you can't do it, but maybe it makes more sense to do it in 6 months or a year. Maybe you plan for that. Maybe you save for that versus just the excitement of, I want to do it now because that's the next big thing. But if you jump before you've fully managed what you currently have, then you're going to end up in a spot where then you can't manage everything that you've gotten yourself into. So it's like James is saying, being faithful in the small, build what you've got so that it's working so well that when you do expand, when you do go to the next thing, that you're ready for it.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I was kind of thinking too, like maybe you guys already said this when I was trying to formulate it, but
when you were napping.
But like, maybe you're ready when you're so busy figuring out how to make your current system better, and you're only spending so much time looking for new opportunities, but the majority of it is spent planning for how do I manage what I have now to the best, and then how am I going to manage the more when it comes. Like if you don't have a plan for expansion for your business or whatever you're trying to manage, real estate, your property, your whatever, your garden, if you don't have a plan for expansion, it's going to catch you with your pants down, and you're going to have.
What were you doing in that garden?
That's
adding some fertilizer.
That's metaphor and literal.
Oh, sorry.
Metaphorically and literally. But I think it may be that like you know you're ready for the next step when you're not spending so much time hoping and looking for it. You're spending more time perfecting your current system and then planning out what that next step for you or the more for you looks like getting those details worked out now. So when it may not look like that exactly, but at least you are like ready when that opportunity comes. You have an idea of like, okay, A, B, and C needs to happen now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's like, let's just say I'm like I'm like 3/4 of the way through a book, and now I come across my next book. Well, I'm not going to stop reading my current book to just jump into my next book. This is what you're talking about, right? It's like, okay, I'm thinking about what's coming, which is good, whilst I'm continuing to be committed to what I'm currently doing. You don't just jump ship and stop what you're doing because you had a new idea or you got excited about something else. That's like, okay, here's that next thing, and here's another thing I'm gonna spend a little time maybe in the evenings doing, but I'm not gonna take away from what I'm currently doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm committed to making this thing happen. And that's a management perspective, right? I'm using whatever we're doing it on purpose. There's a reason why we started that book, right? We're going to finish that book. It's like, sometimes like, it's like if, people want to get into something new that requires more money, right? It's going to be an added expense to what you're currently doing. Well, so if you're already having trouble covering your monthly costs, it doesn't make sense to add an additional expense because you won't be able to cover it, right? You're going to end up in poverty. You're going to end up in a big problem. And so that's not management. I think some of the challenge though is like you get into like kind of the religious world and it's like, listen, man, just have faith. Just believe, right? God's giving you that idea. Just go for it. And it's like, obviously there's a dichotomy to that. There's a balance. But true management counts the costs, like Carolyn was talking about. You got to go through the details. If what you're about, if when you're describing what you're going to do and it's on the premise of I hope it's all going to work out. I think finances are going to get better. Well, I'm believing. That's not management. That's just hope. And as they say, hope is not a strategy. It's not to say that hope is not a real thing, but management looks at the idea, doesn't just have to get rid of it or let it go, but it creates a sustainable pathway to its attainment. This is a big difference between, like, I don't know what the example would be, but it's like if you're trying to build a tower, and because you were so excited about the end result, you didn't build a foundation. And like even the thing it was sitting on was skinnier than the thing at the very top, right? Because you didn't take the time to build the foundation, the thing is going to fall over. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Because we got so excited about the end result that we forgot that there was an entire process that goes into it. So the question is, right, that we got to ask ourselves, how do I know if I'm ready for the next thing? Well, then you got to answer this question. Am I currently managing with absolute excellence and precision what I currently have and am currently doing? Am I currently managing with absolute excellence and precision what I currently have and am currently doing? Or because it's like, not to be crazy, but it's like, are there tasks that you forgot that you had? Are there things that you were given to do and you agreed to do, but you haven't been doing them? You know what I mean? It's like people want, I just want more. Are you doing more to have more? Because it's like, when you're becoming ripe for growth, ripe for expansion, when you have so maximized what you're doing that you're getting bored. And let me quantify that. it no longer takes much effort to maintain or upkeep what you currently have with excellence, right? It's like you've got your processes down. You've been working, you've been maximizing, you started running out of space. So you've consolidated, you've rearranged, right? Like over and over, you did a bunch of research. Like, how can I get rid of this waste? So my space is just, the most productive it can be, and everything's working and growing, and and you've had lots of trials and problems, and you problem solve those, and you did your research, and you're just bursting at the seams. It's like there is nowhere else to expand to except to kind of go to the next level. That's how when you're ready, is because you're so maximizing what you currently have that it's like there's no other option. But I think it's easy to overlook this management perspective, right? It's easy to overlook my current resources or my current whatever, right? Well, I don't have anything. You tell me to use my current resources. I ain't got no resources.
It's the grass is greener on the other side. And they say, well, it's because they're watering it. But it's, you could be in your situation thinking, oh, if I could be over there, then I could be doing better at whatever I'm doing. If I could have that, I could do better. But if you're not taking care of what you have, then when you get over there, it's going to turn brown too. Like it only looks nice and green because it's being managed. It's being taken care of. It has everything it needs. So if you want that grass is greener, then you have to do it in your own world. You can't have what's next if you aren't doing what you're currently doing well. Well, you can, but it won't go well.
It won't, because it's like, and listen, I'm definitely talking out of some experiences here, but it's like, if you go and you do something and it doesn't work, and you're like, okay, well, let me go try to do it somewhere else with somebody else. Okay, that didn't work. Well, let me go try it again. It's like at some point you stop trying again and you go back to like the drawing board and you look at, hey, what is it that we're doing? Like, why? I don't know. You have to be able to look at reality, but like management is managing, true management of your current resources. It helps develop awareness. It helps you look at reality because it's developing your whole mental reality. You're developing disciplines. You got to be able to manage your own life. Too many times, man. There was this. I'm not trying to be crazy, but I knew this guy was I don't know, counselor. Yeah, maybe he was a counselor. And people go to counselors, and they're trying to get marriage advice, yet the counselor's divorced. They're trying to get advice for life, and yet the life of the counselor is like a mess. We're going to these people because they have degrees, but not because they have results. If what they're talking about, they don't got personal experience and results in, what? It's like, I don't know, if you wanted to get wealthy, would you go to somebody who read a bunch of books but is poor, or to somebody who's got $1 million in the bank account? There's a big difference between the guy who read a bunch of books and the guy who actually did the work to create and generate the income. You're going to get very different approaches because one actually has real life experience and the other doesn't. Management, right? As we talk, Be Transformed, man, it's function in every area of life. You don't get to pretend, because we will see right through that junk. You don't get to be a mess at home and then outwardly pretend like you're okay. That's not okay. That means there's fundamentally something incorrect, because who you are is what you bring to the team. It's what you bring to the table. So what your personal life is represents who you really are. So this is where like managing your own personal resources is so huge. Plus, it's also part of developing your vision and your gift. It's in your current resources. So the thing is, though, is that we have to look at what we currently have with fresh eyes, right? Because sometimes it's like, well, you get bored. You get bored. You know, I've been staring at the same wall for 20 years, you know, whatever. It's like, how could there be an opportunity there? Well, like we were reading in Lead the Field, you know, it's like acres of diamonds. You know, that was a story of a guy. Oh, this is a perfect story, right? That was a story of a guy, right? There's this guy somewhere in Africa, and he had a farm. And he heard that people, this is like the grass is always greener. He heard that people were finding diamonds and making lots of money. And he's like, oh my goodness, let's do that. So he sold his property and went out looking for diamonds. I mean, just going wherever I guess other people had gone, but just sold his property for very little because he wanted to go get after his dream. Well, it turns out he had a very hard time finding diamonds. And in a fit of despondency, as it says in the book, he threw himself in a river. And that was the end of our farmer. But the guy who purchased the farmer's land, one day he was out, you know, just taking a walk, enjoying the property. And there's a stream that goes through the property. I mean, this already sounds wonderful. And he finds this rock, which he thinks is like a crystal. Like it's interesting. It's pretty. He's like, you know, grabs it, picks it up, and then puts it inside near his fireplace. Well, sometime later, he has a friend come over, and he comes inside, and that his friend sees that rock, and he's like, what the heck? He's like, bro, where did you get that? He's like, oh, you know, there's a bunch of them, like, all in the stream outside, but they're not necessarily that big, but they're generously scattered all throughout. And he's like, dude, that's a diamond. And it turned out to be one of like the biggest diamonds that was ever found at that time. And it turns out that property was one of the most productive mines in all of Africa, at least at that time. This book was written in the 60s and the story was beyond then. What just happened, and this is a true story. You had a guy who had a dream, but was not qualified. He wasn't trained. Dude didn't even know what like unrefined diamonds looked like. He already owned a piece of the African continent and didn't even think to look on his own property. But this is so much what I'm seeing people do is that they have the idea of the thing they want to do next, and they're like, let's just go all in. There's no research. There's no planning. There's no thought. Here, this guy had a diamond mine, and he sold it for nothing compared to what it was worth to go out and look for it somewhere else, of which he completely failed because he had no idea what he was even looking for. He didn't even think to practice. He didn't think to learn. He didn't think to research, and he ends up killing himself. This is a piece of that byproduct. This is the byproduct of not managing your current resources, of not being prepared for the next step. But like, oh, I'm just going to believe in God and it's all just going to happen. I mean, I was the same way, man. I had, you know, when we started like reading these books and dreaming these dreams and understanding vision and purpose, my idea was like, I was going to teach this stuff and yeah, there I am out there looking, waiting like, okay, where's my group? How come nobody's hiring me yet? Right. Like, aren't I a most sought out speaker? I only had an idea, but everybody should be calling me, right? I should be having these divine interventions where somehow somebody heard about me and none of that stuff's happening. I haven't done anything. I haven't become what I could see, but I didn't understand how vision works. So here I am thinking like I'm looking for the fulfillment of my dream because I just had it, and I'm getting discouraged because I'm not seeing it. But I didn't understand the process at the time, that there's a pathway to the fulfillment of a dream. And if you really want to live out your call, you will not skip this pathway. You don't want to jump the fence. And we'll find out why here coming up. So we're talking about managing your current resources. All right, so like we said, sometimes you got to take a different look at what you have, right? Like, you got to take a fresh look at your life, at your gifts, at what they are, and then like, what can you do right now with what you currently have to start to grow and develop that? Like, I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to spend a ton of money. Like, what can I do with what I have right now? Like, what do I have? And you got to look at it from a different perspective. I'm rereading this book, and he's talking a lot about the mind. And it was interesting because he was talking about the frontal lobe, which is, a part of the brain. And it says the first function of the frontal lobe is to become self-aware. He's talking about it's got metacognitive capabilities. And it's the power to observe your own thoughts and self, right? Because you can observe that, you can then evaluate the quality of what you're thinking, how you're feeling, right? You're not, when you become self-aware, you're no longer a slave, right? Where things are just happening. This is just how it is. This is how God made me. I'm anxious. I worry. When this happens, my emotions go crazy. My mind starts thinking about worst case scenarios. This is just how I am. All right, well, you've got these experiences and you've developed this pattern of thinking and feeling. And then if you make the conclusion that this is how God made me, well, then how are you ever going to change? But your frontal lobe, which is it's just fun that we can define it, because it's proof that part of God's design for us is our ability to change. That's the point of the frontal lobe, is your ability to become aware and observe the very thoughts that you're thinking. Where animals don't have that capability, right? They just respond to stimuli. A deer's eating grass, hears a noise, pops its head up, right? Scans the area, didn't see anything, goes back to eating grass, hears a noise, pops its head up, right? It's like, it's not. And then maybe there is a threat, or it gets scared, and then it darts off, right? Jumps freaking 20 feet over a fence and
exaggeration.
Okay, 18 feet, whatever. And 15 minutes later, it's found a new spot and its heads down eating grass. You know what I mean? It's like it's not stuck in the past fight or flight response, right? Where your emotions, your adrenaline goes, all this stuff starts happening, bam, you pick up and run. Well, 15 minutes later, dude's just back chilling, not stressed out, not remembering that past experience, right? Just responding to the stimuli in the environment. Well, people are different than animals. We were made in the image of God. Well, we actually have the ability to observe our thoughts. Well, plus we're also thinking, hopefully. But we have the ability to observe our thoughts, and therefore we can qualify them. We can evaluate them. Hey, is this thought actually productive? Hey, is this actually moving me anywhere? Or it's like, hey, I actually find that for the last month, I've actually only been stuck on this one problem and I've been circling it and nothing has changed. I wonder if I should start thinking of different thoughts.
I think what I was thinking of when you were talking there, one, deciding how you think too is like the freedom to take a new perspective and figure out what you can manage better that you have currently. Because I was thinking about sometimes you have an idea and you want to get right into it, and you do, but then you may not have the best resources, or you may have to go buy things that aren't exactly what you need, or they're not the newest thing, or you're trying to do with what you have, and it may not be. You may have used things or things that aren't as valuable as maybe what you want in the future. But if you don't treat those things that you have now, like if you have an old car that's 50 years old, but you want a new car or a new truck or something, like if you don't treat that old car, like taking care, changing the oil and doing all that, like you're just going to develop bad habits and bad perspectives that will then, mess you up if you would happen to, eventually, or you just keep putting off that new thing or that next step by mismanaging that. Because like if you develop those habits, those don't attract the next step. Those habits of mismanaging or not taking care of what you have, even if it's old or used or worn out, like that doesn't attract the next thing.
Yeah, 100%. Manage what you have, right? That management adds value to what you have. But like you're saying, if you mismanagement, you don't care. Again, it's like it's like if you don't there's that verse that says if you can't manage somebody else's stuff, who's going to give you stuff of your own to manage? But it's like, like how you treat stuff. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah. I had purchased all these tools at work, and nice tools that I personally use myself, and there's this new group of people in there, and this one guy is holding a tape measure. It's $25 tape measure, and he was measuring something, and then he was gonna go into somewhere else to go grab a part. So he throws the tape measure, and I was like kind of doing something else, but it's like I heard it fall, and I said, "Did you just throw that tape measure?" I was everybody just staring at me. It's like how you treat stuff matters.
Yeah.
Right? It's like carelessness is unacceptable. It's just like everything, stuff matters. Like how you treat it matters. I mean, there's a balance to everything we're saying, but there's an emphasis on you are managing what you currently have. So if all your stuff is falling apart, what's that say about your management?
Yeah.
Right? How are you taking care of it? If you left your lawnmower out in the rain and the snow all winter and it's all rusty and it doesn't work next year, what's that say about your management? How much did you care about what you have? Right? Because you're going to need to mow that lawn, especially in Ohio.
Yeah, totally.
Or you have a jungle.
And it's like, too, I think we get into this thing where it's like, well, I own that lawnmower. So whatever. But then you go to work or you do something. It's like, yeah, you may be a good manager there, but if you can't manage your stuff that you have, that you think you own, then that starts to develop bad habits too. And I think the other thing I was going to say was like, it's easy to feel like you're going somewhere by being like busy, but like, I forget what it is, but it's like being busy doesn't necessarily mean you're achieving anything. And so It's easy to be like, you have all these things that you're being busy and you're wondering why nothing's happening, but maybe you're being busy doing the wrong things, or you're not managing what you should be truly managing, because it takes responsibility or accountability to manage those big things, and you're just kind of acting busy waiting for the next thing. That's kind of what I've found myself doing sometimes. It's like, well, I'm busy, but not really going anywhere. Well, maybe what I'm busy doing isn't getting me anywhere.
Right. No, it's huge.
No, there was a story, or somebody in his book who was talking about, if I rent a car, I'm not going to care as much about like if I leave trash in it or whatever. And I was just like, I was kind of shocked by that perspective coming from this person in leadership, like whatever. But I was just like, I don't think like you should be treating other people's stuff as good as you would treat your own stuff. So it's like, if that's how, and he was giving the example that like, you don't care as much when it's not yours. But I kind of disagreed with that perspective, because I was like, like we stay in an Airbnb or we rent a car, like we're going to treat that like we would our own stuff, because like, and we treat our stuff nicely, and you could have a flip side of that where people treat it poorly because that's how they manage their own life or their own things. But I just was thinking about how, if anything that you, and however you handle stuff, it seems like that'd be a reflection of how you are in your own stuff, in your own life, versus the opposite of like, oh, it's not mine, so I don't care about it. But
No, right. Well, it's like Logan was talking about. It's like because it's the habits that you have. So I mean, if you track mud into your own house, then you're not going to think twice about tracking it into somebody else's house. It's like I don't know that you become totally different, but I mean, you can, right? Like you can totally get into that perspective. Oh, it's not mine, so who cares? You know, do what you want. I'm gonna be a little more lenient because it's not my stuff. But I mean, you're still responsible for it.
yeah, I mean, maybe you're not going to take the rental car through a car wash, like he gave that example. Like
Yeah.
maybe you're not going to go above and beyond, but you wouldn't return it. Like I wouldn't leave trash in it, like littered with all, this is like, because that's a reflection of me. Like, I don't,
Right.
I wouldn't want that to be my,
Yeah, your car.
yeah.
I think to grow and expand whatever you're doing is going to depend on other people. And so if you can't treat your own stuff right, and you can't treat then you don't treat other people's right, you'll never grow and expand. Because like if it's business or whatever, growing and expanding or getting to the next step is ultimately going to depend on somebody else, whether it's somebody else's business that you get or a customer or whatever. It's going to depend on treating someone else's things or treating them as a customer the best that you can, which ultimately leads back to how you treat yourself and the things you have.
Right. I mean, that's the training ground. It's the good habits that then qualify you and prepare you for the things that are outside. So it's like, when we're talking about looking at our resources differently, right? Like how the self-awareness, the frontal lobe, that's the ability to observe what it is we're doing. You could walk around your house, your property, even your work, right? Your desk, your office, or whatever it is you're doing. You could just take stock. You could just look and you just be like, okay, look at this as an observer would look at it, right? Somebody who's never seen it before. And and let's just say that person who had never seen it was going to judge you based upon what they saw, right? They were going to give you an evaluation based upon your environment, because your environment, as we know, your outer environment is a reflection of your inner world. So if your thoughts are circular and chaotic, I guarantee your environment looks that way. So when you're going through your environment, right? You go through your environment with fresh eyes, right? You're pretending that you're somebody who's never been here before. They don't know you, but they got to look through your life. They're going to look at the books you have, whatever you've been doing on your phone. They're going to look at all the activities that you've been doing. And just remember, it's you, but it's just pretend like it's somebody else. And then they're going to evaluate you based on what they see. What are they going to see? Because your outer environment is a reflection of your inner world. And so to get a really good perspective of your inner world and of your reality, go look through your whole environment and go tell me what you see. Tell yourself what you see. Write it down. Write your evaluation about yourself. Does this person care? Do they care about what they have? Are they managing it? Do they look like they're being distracted and they got halfway through one project and then got into another project? What's that evaluation? That's going to give you some insight into what you have and what you're doing. And then the next question is, once you decide that evaluation is, well, who do I want to be? Like, who am I and who am I trying to be and what am I trying to become? And how can I manage my current environment so that I start to become that person? Because if you think that like later on down the road somewhere, somehow the vision's going to come true and you're just going to somehow, once it happens, I'll develop the new disciplines, forget it. That junk ain't never going to happen. You might somehow figure out how to hop the fence, but you're not going to have the development to be able to maintain it. You're going to build that tower that falls over. So I think another aspect, one is that evaluation. But another one is like it's a look at identity. It's a look at who we really are and who we're created to be. You know, there's a difference, because when I think about management, I think about like the beginnings of identity, right? So there's a really big difference in mentality between a slave and a son, right? Like sonship, sons and daughters, versus like a slave or a servant, right? A slave sits and waits for instructions. A servant goes to the master and asks, hey, what do you want me to do today? And then the master gives the instructions, and then the servant leaves. While the sons and daughters of God sit at the table with the Father and talk ideas and dream dreams about vision, purpose, action, influence, and then they go and work those ideas into realities, right? Servants have to keep coming back to the master, back and forth. What's the next step? Okay, I got that one done. What you want me to do? What about now? Okay, I got a problem. Okay, what do I do? Right? Sons and daughters have visions for years. You know, people are like, what are you going to do today? Well, I don't know. I haven't asked God what I'm doing today. No, man, I'm telling you, there's something more richer that we are created to live in, right? A servant seeks immediate instructions while the sons and daughters commune with the Father as a way of life. A servant has to keep coming and going and coming and going while the sons and daughters are forever permanently connected to the Father. There's a big difference in thought, identity, mentality, self-concept, and a way of life between a servant and a son. Miles gives this picture, right? He's like, when a child is born into royalty, as soon as that child is born, the attending servants address that child as your majesty or your highness, right? From the get-go, that child is being groomed to be exactly what it was meant to be, right? Like the position in that family from the beginning, right? They are learned, they are addressed as who they are. And then from birth, they're trained to actually be able to take that position, right? I mean, so they're learning, here's how you sit at the table, here's how, here's a plate and all your different forks and spoons and knives and whatever, here's how you dress. Here's how you conduct yourself. Royalty never has to raise their voice because what they say is law. The perspective, right? They're just constantly being trained to become who they are. That's different than like slavery or just servanthood. Well, I just want to serve God. No, I want to freaking be what I was created to be. I want to take my call and freaking turn it into something that has value because that's why I'm born. Right? There's a big difference though in how you conduct yourself in life and how you view, right? Would you view that you have resources? Would you view that you have potential, that you have a gift? Or, are you just sitting and waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do? Because managing your current resources is about living on purpose. It's about leading your own life. It's about developing that independence, which is weird because in religion, they're like, no, you got to be dependent. You need God. God, we need you. Oh, we're in need. Well, why would I need something I already have? It's a different perspective with a big different outcome. It matters.
I was thinking too, like return on investment, being the person that lives like, I don't know, like you said, I don't know what you said, but I want to perform, live out my purpose. I don't want to just sit and try to, be in need or whatever, but I want to go live out my purpose. And so like doing that, like understanding that there was like an investment put in you, like there's like God has put his investment in you, just like you would invest into like a IRA or whatever, or a whatever, or
401k.
Like, yeah, like just like you would invest in like a property or something. God has put his investment in you, and he expects some kind of return on that. And that's why like he was, I think, so frustrated at this like in that parable of the servant that didn't do anything with the money that he was given, because like that was that was God's money or God's investment. And it's the same thing with us, where it's like God has invested in us, and it's our responsibility to bring out a return. And that takes that perspective, like, well, are you going to live your life, which is an investment, as a servant or as a son? And if as a son or as an heir, you can produce a return. Instead of as a servant, you're always just looking for, or you're not really looking for anything except being told what to do. And that doesn't generate a good return on investment.
Well, no. So it's like, because it's the development process. And so this is where it gets weird, because it's like, so we're talking about being like independence. But, religion says, no, you got to be dependent. And so we're just like, okay, God's going to, I got rent coming up. God's going to bring that money in. Well, I heard it said, God didn't give Adam and Eve a table and chairs, but he gave them trees. And hidden inside of that resource was lumber as a tree that you could process with, if you employed your creative faculties, right? You could turn that tree into something useful that then you could sit on a chair, you could sit at a table versus sitting on the floor. God gave us like resources. And so when I think about like independence, and and then there's like the clash with religion, which is like, no, we need God, and it's that need that draws you close to him. I'm like, I don't see that playing out in my life with my kids. I don't see them staying dependent on me as a benefit. That would be crippling them, because that's not the point of life. So it's like, there is a time, man, where you are dependent. And I even think about this, as I'm like currently like reading through the Old Testament. When Israel came out of Egypt and they were in the wilderness, this was a time of dependency. It really was, right? Like God was like, hey, okay, he was going to cause the manna to fall. And he's like, all right, well, you're going to gather just enough for today. You don't want any left over. But then on the 6th day, you're going to gather for 2 days, right? Because then the 7th day is the Sabbath. You're not going to do any work. So you're already going to have that. You're going to gather that on the 6th day, and then bam, the following day, you'll get back after it. And he said, he's like, I'm going to do this to see if they'll trust me. That there really was this time of trust and dependency. But when they crossed the Jordan, right, when after the first group died and all their kids were a little more grown, when they crossed the Jordan the next day, they ate from the fruit of the land. And when they did that, the following day, there was no more manna. Now, from a religious point of view, you'd be like, oh my gosh, we sinned. We went against God. We no longer were trusting in him, depending on him. We went and depended on our own selves, and now God's no longer giving us manna. We did something wrong. That's one perspective you could have. But the correct perspective is that there was a season change. And we went from dependency to independence. We went from, okay, he's going to provide for me, to now he's providing the resources and the ability for me to go and manage and impose my vision on a plot of land, to plan and to think about, hey, when do I need to grow? What do I need to grow? When do I need to plant? Like you have to go through the process to be able to now take care of yourself and your family. There's a very big different perspective and mentality and effort that goes into living on purpose versus like dependency. Dependency is not where we're meant to live. It should be one of the steps in your growth and development process. But at some point, right, we teach our kids to use the toilet instead of a diaper. At some point, we teach our kids to tie their shoes instead of us having to tie them. At some point, we teach our kids to make their own food so we're not making it, right? My son made dinner last night. We were downstairs working, and he comes down, and he's like, hey, should I throw this thing in the oven? I said, oh, what time is it? He's like, it's 4. I'm like, beautiful. And he goes and he cooks it, right? He comes down, a couple questions, but it's like he initiated cooking dinner while we were working. It was beautiful. That's right. Like he is meant to grow and develop so that he can then take care of himself, right? Where he's already generating his own income. He's already got a business. I mean, at 13, he's already quite a few years into adding value and providing service to other people, so that he's growing and developing into his gifts, so that when it's time for him to move out or go to the next thing, he's actually equipped to do that. That's the whole point of life. But see, what we don't do sometimes is we have this religious bubble, and it's like we have this really weird view of God, this really weird view of ourselves, and then we never really apply. We never really can justify or understand the difference, because we're like, okay, well, this is spiritual, but then over here, this is physical, and these two things are different. No, the spirit is what makes the physical alive. I mean, you could take a 30-year-old male who is alive, and you could have a 30-year-old male who's dead, and you could put them right next to each other. It's kind of weird. But both of them all have the same parts, right? One guy's alive, one guy's dead. Everybody's got a head, everybody's got a brain, everybody's got a heart, lungs, your stomach, muscles, all your organs, all your body parts are the same. One guy's alive, one guy's dead. What's the difference? One guy's still got a spirit that's connected to that body that charges everything, that makes this it's that invisible power that makes this thing work, where the dead guy doesn't. The physical is what it's like. It's I want to say funded. It's energized by the invisible, and that was on purpose. But how we view the world and how we view ourselves affects how we interpret it. And therefore, whether or not you would look at your resources and be like, hey, am I supposed to do something with these? Yeah, I keep having this idea, hey, if I spend some time, I could type up some stuff, or I could create this or create that. You got these ideas, but then you never get after it. Well, those ideas could very well be part of your management, right? It could be part of your developing that gift. Using the time now, right? Where I had my vision, where I was like, okay, I'm ready to speak in front of people. No, I wasn't. I didn't even have anything, right? Like I had ideas, but it's like I didn't have a developed program and whatever. And I worked towards that. But it's like, just because you have the idea doesn't mean you're ready to fulfill it. And you see that in the Bible, and we see that in life. But the whole point of that picture, though, is to show you the pathway that you need to take to reach it, the skills you need to develop. And that development process is in currently, how am I managing everything I currently have? How am I managing my relationships? How am I managing my tasks and my duties? How am I managing my personal time? How am I managing my mornings? What standard am I living by? Right? Is it like, I'll just do it later. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter when I show up. As long as I show up and I get it done, then that's good enough. Like, what standards are we living by? Because I want a higher standard. I believe we were created for more than just getting by. But it's these perspectives that help shape your attitude. Your attitude then is it's the cadence that you live by. So if your attitude is that of like, stuff doesn't really matter, finishing doesn't really matter, like who cares about completing it, right? I meant to. I had good intentions. I intended to get it done. I intended to jump on that phone call. I intended to fill out that spreadsheet. I intended. I meant to. I felt good about it when I thought about it. Good intentions are not the same thing as good actions. Good intentions don't produce results. Well, they don't produce good results. Good actions do. What we do matters.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, don't mistake movement for achievement kind of deal too. Like like you said, good thoughts and good intentions don't produce good results. Good results are that thought put into action.
I think when you have good intentions, it's like this desire disconnected from discipline. So it's like yeah, well, I think it'd be good to do that, or I think, but it's like, but you can't actually translate it over into like what becomes what you do. And yeah, I mean, it's like you can have good intentions to keep your house clean, or you can have good intentions to get your laundry done, but it's just like until you turn that into a reality, until you actually manage your schedule and your activities, you won't actually get those things done. And yes, these are personal examples of where, James is talking about like, oh, I intended to fill that spreadsheet out, but it's just like, for us, it's like, it's those little things, those little practices, those, those little habits that, then you don't skip those things. Like there's no amount of activity or like, aside from like some catastrophe, but like it's just like, you could give excuses for why things don't get done, but at the end of the day, if you don't put in those daily practices, then you can't manage those extra things. Like it just, for us, it's like it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Like just put the information in the spreadsheet. Like that doesn't seem like a big task, but like because you're not managing you're kind of just being tossed by the wind to and fro, whatever comes, versus like actually controlling your environment and be like, yes, I do have a lot going on. So, okay, let me like actually,
Manage
put it
my
to
time.
Yeah, let me actually put a to-do list together so that let me get to those important things first. Let me, because it can't just be like, oh, okay, now I need this next thing, so let me go back and catch up on, what I was supposed to do before. But no, it's about doing the little things daily, which if you actually do that, it's not that much time. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, but it does take management. But yeah, like you're talking, it's the difference between like good intentions. The difference between like having a dream and then like manifesting it, right? Like the only way an idea, which is invisible, becomes visible is when you flesh it out through action. And there's a big difference.
Yeah, I was reading this little blip from Miles, and he was saying our dreams, plans, and visions, they're targets of evil forces that desperately attempt to keep glory from God. And as long as we are only dreaming, those evil forces are safe and they'll let us alone. But once you start putting actions to those dreams and those thoughts, it's like now there's some glory flowing from you that goes to God.
Right. There's the difference between dreaming isn't doing anything. Actions are. But I mean, you have to be able to look at reality though. And look, it's constantly something I think about. Well, I'm thinking, but am I doing? It's like the two words that kind of came to mind when I was thinking about, the year of 2025. It was discipline and consistency. And Jim Rohn said, a couple well thought out disciplines apply daily. What you do daily affects what you become, right? Like the sum total of your life is based on the decisions you made and the actions you've taken, right? What you have right now is the byproduct of your habits. Well, if you want new results, you're going to have to develop new habits. And but one of those, it's like thinking about, okay, it's not 100 different things. No, it's just a few well thought out habits applied daily that are going to then, if it's connected to your vision, it's connected to your gift, it's connected to your purpose, those things then are going to continue to help you develop, right? That's why we read books and we do it on purpose. We have these disciplines because of where it's taking us. We know where it's going to take us eventually. So we're doing the work now to become who we want to become. We're not hoping, we're not leaving it to fate or chance or wishes. No, we're intentionally doing the work to become who we want to become because we understand how it works. And this is huge. Discipline and consistency. So discipline was a couple well thought out habits. And then consistency. John Maxwell, I listened to an interview he was doing, and he was like, intensity is often overrated and consistency is underrated, right? Where it's like, for him, and John Maxwell's written close to 100 books, if not 100 books or more. But it's like, for him, he's like, in the morning, every day, I do some writing. He's like, today he had stuff going on, so he got 15 minutes of writing in, but it's a discipline that he's consistent with. And so over time, he's getting a ton of things done versus intensity where it's like, okay, I got this idea. I want to write a book and I'm going to put 8 hours a day into writing that book, right? That intensity is a bit intense and you can get burned out, or it's like, it doesn't actually become a habit. Like if you wanted to, so let's just say I wanted to lose 5 pounds in 30 days. So, I change up what I'm eating a little bit. I do some more exercise and bam, at the end of the month, I lose 5 pounds. Well, I get so excited that I lost 5 pounds. I got to celebrate. So I go eat some pizza, a whole box of cookies. And I gain those 5 pounds back, right? Because I just get back into my old habits because I had a goal, reached it, bam. Versus like, there's a book called The Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he's talking about like the difference between essentially, it's like having goals or like changing your identity. So it's like, okay, I want to lose 5 pounds. That's having a goal. But once you reach that goal, if there's not another goal to keep you on track, you can slip back into your old habits. But if instead you're changing your identity where it's like, no, I'm a fit person. So I do what fit people do, right? So they're like, how does a fit person eat? Like, how does a fit person spend their time? How to, like I go on walk. Like it's you're changing your habits versus just having a goal. And that works with the consistency piece is where it's like, no, I'm not trying to write a book. I'm a writer. So then I do what writers do. And because I'm a writer, I write. So then every day I'm spending time writing, right? That's that consistency piece. And those two words really have been standing out to me, and they're things that I'm continually thinking about, right? I'm thinking thoughts, and I am dreaming dreams. And then I am, I'm evaluating myself. I'm like, all right, I'm doing good in this area, but in this area, like I'm actually not making it happen. So what can I do to because I got to develop a new habit, right? I got to develop this habit. So what can I do to just kind of keep putting some repetitions in, on a weekly basis to develop this habit? And so we're all on the process, but the question is like, are you managing right now everything you're doing with absolute excellence and precision? Right? Are you operating at a higher standard? Are you taking personal responsibility for your life and its outcomes? Or are you sitting and waiting for things to happen? Are you just hoping God's going to come through? Or are you taking responsibility for your income? Are you taking responsibility for the things that you're responsible for? Right? Are we slaves or are we sons? Sons and daughters. Right? Are we royalty or not? Right? How are we going to conduct ourselves? If somebody came into our environment and looked around, what would they see? If you want more, man, you got to take care of what you currently have, because it's only if you're faithful in the little that you'll be faithful in much. So do not overlook the little. Evaluate your life. Evaluate your environment, and ask the question, hey, if I got this dream for something new, but am I currently managing what I have now? Can I actually manage more, or would it prevent me from managing what I currently have? You got to ask these questions before you just jump in, because we want to walk through the doorway. We don't want to jump the fence. So guys, this has been session 1 of management, and there is more to come. So guys, thanks so much for kicking it with us. Until next time, peace.